All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 963rd monthly meeting of ATMoB. Our guest speaker tonight will be Molly Wakeling, also known as AstronoMolly online. And her talk will be Astrophotography Joyride, a journey to the stars. The agenda is very similar to other months. This month we'll have the nominations from the nominating committee. I'll have that between outreach and old business, new business. And I hope many of you have been able to take advantage of the nice clear nights, the past couple of nights. Seems to be nice. What do we have here? Very nice.
Somebody wake up, Glenn.
Oh. So next up, we have the observing committee report. Glenn and Rich.
I'll work the buttons for Glenn. Go ahead, Glenn.
At my age, I regularly see an endocrinologist, a cardiologist, a dermatologist, and an ophthalmologist. I'm getting so old, I've begun seeing paleontologists. And this is actually true, not that part, but I was talking to a friend the other day, and I'm getting to an age where I forget things. I'll forget words that are simple. Like the other day, I was talking about Dobsonian mounts, and I couldn't remember the name of a Dobsonian mount. It's kind of like an altaz, it's the opposite of an equatorial. And anyway, I finally figured that out, but I was talking to a friend and I couldn't think of cardiologist, sorry Mario, and I just paleontologist, I was looking for some philologist, and I came up with paleontologist. True story. Okay, next slide. I think it's, you're gonna talk Rich about what's going on.
Sorry, right arrow. Oops, see, I always hit that too high. So I wrote up I always hit that too high. Yeah. There we go. So observing highlights for May, for this month, there's not much going on. Of course, you know, the sun sets later and later. The skies don't really get nice and dark until 9-ish, maybe a little bit after. New moon is on Friday, May 19th. So we're in this week coming up, we're in the dark of the moon. So I hope the wildfire smoke from Canada wafts away from us so we can get some nice transparent skies while the moon is dark. If you are into astrophotography or nightscape photography, Earthshine will be most prominent from May 21st to 23rd when there's that slender crescent over in the western part of the skies. So that's a nice photo op for the moon. Tuesday, May 23rd, when the moon's near Venus. This gives a nice opportunity. I think I put this in the Planet Roundup, but a nice opportunity to find Venus in the daytime with your naked eye, because the moon will be relatively easy to find. And if you know where the moon is relative to Venus, it will make finding Venus actually pretty easy. And you can actually see it with your naked eye. It's minus 4.5678. I can't remember. It's very bright. So even under the daylight sky is a Bortle 24 sky. Even under a Bortle 24 sky, you can see Venus. And the moon reaches first quarter on the 27th. Then. But here's the real highlight of the month. And this is a little challenge our daytime observing skills. On Wednesday, May 17th, the moon will occult Jupiter. A 5% illuminated waning crescent moon will cover a minus 2.1 magnitude Jupiter, which will have a diameter of 33.7 arc seconds. The occultation begins at about 7:44 in the morning, a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Your mileage may vary because it's dependent on your location, the exact moment when Jupiter, or the little window of time when Jupiter slips behind the moon. It'll be over by 8:55, and the reappearance is on the dark limb. That'll make it hard to see the reappearance. But if you use the moon as a guidepost, you should be able to see this event. Folks with a go-to telescope, just tell it to go to the moon, and you'll be able to see Jupiter. Well, Jupiter will be washed out and faint, but you'll still be able to see it. Another technique is to follow it out of the twilight or after sunrise, and hopefully it'll be clear. That'll be a fun thing to watch. So that is the highlight for the month as far as I'm concerned. The Planet Roundup, again, Venus, 45 degrees east of the sun, minus 4.3, 22 arc seconds. This is about late May. Transits at 4 in the afternoon. Greatest elongation is on June 4th. Saturn, for you early risers, getting up about 2 in the morning. The ring tilt this year is about 8 to 10 degrees. So those rings are starting to narrow out, right? They're starting to become more and more edge on. I can't remember when ring plane passages, I think it's sometime in 2025. Jupiter's low in the east just before sunrise, and Mercury reaches greatest elongation west, 25 degrees from the sun on Monday, May 29th. Not particularly favorable for northern observers, but there you have it. And here's the observer's challenge for the month, NGC 4088, Intermediate Spiral Galaxy. Do you want to talk about this, or? Because I've got some experience with this now.
Okay, you know what? Go ahead and tell them what your experience is, and then I'll give them the.
See this empty patch of sky here? This is pretty hard to find, actually. I was out, what are we on today? Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday night with my 12-inch scope with an 80mm finder. And it actually took me a while to actually pin down the location of this galaxy in the sky. There's no easy path to it. I jumped off of Fecta here and found my way through the stars to there.
It's about a 4-degree star hop, so it does take a little bit of doing.
Yeah, with no real bright stars along the way. But first on Tuesday night, I saw a ghostly streak of light through the eyepiece of the 12-inch. Remember light pollution and smoke, sort of killing off the transparency. A very difficult galaxy. Last night, I was up at the clubhouse with the 25-inch. One of our new members, Rob, was there with us last night. He got to enjoy some views from the 25-inch scope. But even in the 25-inch scope, I actually couldn't see 4088. And the galaxy I'd seen the night before, turns out, if I'm correct, was NGC 4085. So I still have some work to do. I don't think I've actually seen 4088 just yet. Challenging.
It takes a while for you to hard adapt from the moon.
Yep.
That's the
Well, I
problem.
wasn't even on it. I mean, from last month.
It can take weeks.
Weeks for that to go away.
Especially 5% illuminated.
Those are tricky. Anyway, so let's see the next slide, Glenn. It's got right arrow button. That's the logo. That's the logo for the computer. Right here.
Oh.
Well, Glenn's tapping the logo for the computer. So there's a nice image by Mario. And it is, this is actually an ARP galaxy. So you can see that it's interacting with something. It's not a very pretty.
Yeah, one of the spiral arms has been tugged on a little bit.
Yeah, this warp thing here and this over here almost, betrays that there was some sort of an interaction. And there are some galaxies that are nearby.
And by the way, I'll jump in on this too, because I did check it out with my 10-inch scope. And honestly, I was surprised. It was brighter than I thought it would be. And unfortunately, the way this is about a month ago, so we hadn't had that good a period of weather. But I would guess it would be visible with a 6-inch scope and probably a 4 or 5-inch or 4-inch reflector rather under dark sky conditions. It's about 11.5 magnitude, something like, I think it was 6x2 as far as arc minutes in size. But this is Mario's image.
And it's got a reasonable surface brightness. It's not ultra faint, but I think a dark sky would really help with this one.
I think with visual, it's hard to see any detail. I think, like Rich said, in my 10-inch, it was just a hazy, fuzzy patch, and that was about it. There was no concentration like a bright nucleus or anything like that. All right, can I push the button?
Sure, go ahead.
And Doug, you're here if you want to discuss. This is Doug's image, a little bit closer up.
It is a little faint around the edges, which could be hard on the visual observers. That's 3 hours with a 6-inch aperture. Also, Rich brought up the issue of color, I think it was last time. And I shoot natural colors, so all those colors are driven from the data.
This looks like a galaxy right here. One of the interlopers.
You mentioned 4085, which is actually just a short distance to the south.
There'll be a later picture of that, yeah.
And if you remember the preliminary picture shown last month, that 4085 was on that.
Yeah, yep.
And Mario, I have to apologize. I didn't give you a chance to talk about your picture. Want me to go back and just let people know the details?
Not too much to say. It's taken.
There we go.
Not too much to say. Take it with the 32. I did luminance for an hour, red, green, blue, a half hour each. I think the blue actually was 40 minutes, 30 minutes each, green and red. And then I think 40 minutes to get the edge alpha. There wasn't a lot of it, but I put it in.
Nice job on both. Okay,
So what do we
continue.
know about the galaxy a little bit below it to the left? That little guy.
Oh,
This right here, it's that guy up there.
There it is, yeah. Does anybody know anything about it?
what
Nope.
is that, NGC?
No, it's a P. It's a
PC 38349, that was probably.
That looks like a regular spiral. I would bet that's far away.
Yeah.
But this is 4085 right
Right
here.
here, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
And in my scope, I could key on these stars here, these stars, and that's what that's the galaxy I first thought was 4088. When I looked at this through the 25-inch last night, I immediately realized that I wasn't looking at 4088, I was looking at 4085. And then I moved up to that position using that star as a guide, and I actually could not see anything there, but I didn't give it a
Really?
lot of time. You know, the quote that's oftentimes attributed to Michael Covington, where he recommends, or it is recommended, that one spends at least a half an hour on a galaxy that's going to be faint, to let your eye begin to get used to the field and to actually start to visualize it. And I didn't have the time last night, but I'm gonna get a scope to a darker sky just to see what I can make out.
I'm kind of surprised because that was easy. I didn't see anything there at all.
I was probably in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
My experience has told me that 99% of the time, if you think you're on the right spot, if you're looking for a galaxy that you think you can see and it's not there, you're probably not looking in the right spot. You should go back and re-examine your charts and figure out where you are. That's usually the case.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like the annotation over there. That's kind of fun. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mark.
And presellage, this is from
Middleman.
Middleman.
Yeah.
We got a great scope there. Look at the colors on those stars. Do you want to give any particulars on this one?
Well, pretty much all the galaxies I process for the Middleman come from 2 hours of luminance and 30 minutes of the three major color bands. We're using photometric filters, so they're a little difficult to calibrate, but some of the features in like Pix Insight help with that. But yeah, so we're using the slow and red filter, a Bessel V filter, and the Johnson & Cousins blue. And so you can still get the colors right out of it, but it takes some work. Unfortunately, with this projector, you can't see there's a lot of background galaxies that are visible in that on the image. I have that on the ATMoB website that anybody interested can take a closer look at.
I just want to point out, again, this little asterism right here, that's what I used visually when I was kind of logging in. I think those stars look like they're about 10th magnitude. These are all in the 9th to 10th magnitude range, but that's when I star hopped, I went off of this group, first of all, a Y-shaped group, and then I keyed on these two stars and I knew where to look. And I could see, again, just a hazy or oval patch. See what we got coming up. That might be my sketch. Oh, nice job, Rich. He showed where that triangle is, right, or that one letter Y right here.
Yeah.
Here's what I saw. I saw nothing in here. So maybe the next time I would look more carefully. I wasn't sure, but that's basically the same field. This is about a 1 degree field of view, but that's what I was able to see with a 10-inch scope. And the preview for next month, we got Doug's picture here. This is going to be a little tough, but I'm not sure it's going to be that bad. But it's a pair of galaxies, NGC 5774/5. And here's 5774. It's almost a face-on spiral galaxy. And then an edge on. This is 5775. And this was actually the brighter of the two. It's about 11th magnitude. So it should be visible. I'm going to count on this one. This one might be a little bit tougher. And it's near the star 109 Virgo, not too far from the head of the serpent. In fact, the serpent's right up in here.
This is 110 Virginus right here. So it's on the next slide, I put some stats
Okay,
for these two galaxies.
next slide. So I
I think
got to.
it's the next slide. So here they are. So they're 1.8 degrees north of the midpoint of a line between 109 and 110 Virginus. I always forget their names. What's the 3-volume observers guide?
Oh,
Pardon?
Burnham's.
No, they're the.
Geometry?
Yeah.
Oh, Sander and-
Sepple.
Center, simple, yes.
Yeah, now I'm gonna have to apologize to those guys. Anyway, in those books.
It's the big white books,
the big
hardcover
white
books.
Yeah,
The night sky.
Go by constellation by constellation.
yeah.
Yeah, there's two, there's winter sky and the summer sky, and I think the third edition has probably southern sky, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
so this is from volume 2, and
Yeah,
that's what
Sander
these-
and Keppel.
that's what these star ratings are from. And so you can see that 4774 has only got 2 stars. That doesn't say, that tells me it's a really challenging galaxy. a surface brightness of 14.3. That's pretty faint. The edge on Galaxy is 5775. Okay, they gave it 3 stars. Its surface brightness is 12.6. So that makes it a much easier galaxy to see. And then I threw in here just for fun, if you want to see a nice galaxy, something that might not be a challenge, hop over to 5746. It's literally 20 arc minutes west of 109 Virginis, and it's actually a really nice galaxy. It's got a nice high surface brightness, and it's just a pretty galaxy. So if these mess with you, break your confidence, go over to this guy right here. And those should all, I can't speak for the fainter one, but I'll bet these other two are in I like to look at the pocket sky atlas from SkyTel, so it's a great little resource to have. So those are the challenges for next month.
No, is this, yeah, that's just next month, June's.
And with that, I'd like to introduce the speaker this month. So our speaker is Molly Wakeling, also known as AstronoMolly online, and her talk will be an Astrophotography Joyride, a journey to the stars. And so from a DSLR on a simple alt-az mounted Schmidt-Cassegrain to 4 automated backyard imaging rigs, astrophotographer Molly Wakeling has come a long way in 8 years. Follow AstronoMolly on her journey into the dark night sky. She'll tell stories of joy and woe, and how she's fixed problem after problem to do one of the most difficult hobbies out there. Molly Wakeling recently joined Astronomy Magazine as a contributing editor, taking on the Observing Basics column, long written by our own Glenn Chaple. Molly is actively involved in STEM outreach. She's an AAVSO Ambassador, an Explore Alliance Ambassador, and a panelist and broadcaster on the Astro Imaging Channel YouTube show. Molly is currently pursuing her PhD in nuclear engineering and holds a master's in nuclear engineering and a bachelor's in physics from Washington State University. So we may do a little transition. Let's see. Is Molly on?
Yeah, she's on.
Yep, I'm here. Hi.
How's it going?
Going good.
Should be able to make you co-host, and you should be able to share soon.
Okay.
Okay, I think you should be able to share when you're ready.
All right.
Everyone, please welcome Molly.
Thanks so much for inviting me to come speak, and thank you for the introduction. I'm Molly, and I've quite an adventure getting into astrophotography for the last several years, and I think anybody who's gotten into astrophotography says that they have an adventure because it's a tough hobby, and a lot of challenges, but a lot of joys as well. So I want to take you through my story and how I got to going from this single fork arm alt-az mount to the 4 rigs I have currently sitting in my backyard. Not imaging tonight because it's cloudy, but I imaged last night. So yeah, this all started back in July of 2015 when I got my first telescope as a gift. It's a bit of a long story, but I took it out on the first dewy night here in Ohio back in July of 2015. And on that first night, I started keeping a log of all of my astronomy exploits. And I'm very glad that I've been keeping a log because it's kind of fun to go back and see my reactions to things and things I used to think were true, but actually learned later aren't true. And just kind of see how far I've come. So the first night that we had it out, I was aligning it and it wasn't quite in focus yet. So once I got it aligned and got it pointed over on Saturn, and then I got it focused, then I just about fell over upon seeing Saturn through the eyepiece because it just looks like a picture, like somebody's hung a picture right in front of it. I think a lot of you probably had that same experience with either Saturn or Jupiter for the first time, just it being absolutely mind-boggling and how incredible it is. So my first thought was I got to get my friends over here to come look through the eyepiece, the ones who had come out with me to the park. Then my second thought was, I got to figure out how to take a picture of this thing so that I can share this with everybody on my Facebook. And so a little bit of online research revealed that I could buy this adapter to connect my DSLR to the telescope. So I got one, and a few weeks later took my first picture of Saturn through the telescope, and it's a hazy, vibrating mess, because when you actuate the shutter, it vibrates the telescope, and also the atmosphere makes everything blurry. But a picture of Saturn nonetheless. And then eventually later on learned how to do video and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a little disappointing in that first picture, but I figured I'd figure it out eventually. After doing some visual observing on it, I thought maybe I should try taking a long exposure of some of these things I'm trying to look at, like the Lagoon Nebula, which is a large target for an 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain that, but I didn't know that at the time, you know. And I could see through the telescope pretty much just the stars. I couldn't see any of the nebulosity with this F10 instrument out at about Bortle 5-ish skies. But when I put the DSLR on there and I took this 1-minute frame, it wasn't tracking well enough to take a 1-minute frame with steady stars, but I got color and I could see more nebulosity than I could see with my eyes. So that, well, that's cool. And I think about this time, kind of started figuring out that there was a community of people who did this. I was hitting up some online forums and stuff to kind of get some ideas on how this was done. I also took a picture of, here's the very exciting core of the Andromeda Galaxy with this like a single subframe as well. It can see about the same as you see with your eyes for that one. And then I learned about this thing called stacking, where you take multiple pictures and stack them in order to get more signal to noise on the target you're looking at. So I tried this with the Dumbbell Nebula in the following months. And yeah, like look at all that color I got on there. It was so exciting to be able to get color that I couldn't see just with my eyes. And I was limited to about 20, 30-second long exposures on that mount, since it didn't track well enough to take much longer than that. And I had to throw out about half the exposures anyway for the stars being jittery. But then I finally, as winter came around, I tried taking a picture of the Orion Nebula, which is really the first target that any astrophotographer should go for if the time of year is right, because I was just floored by how incredible one of the subframes looked. And then I went and stacked them, and I got all this detail and this structure and these colors. And a note from my log, I talked about, I'd always wondered if the colors in the Hubble pictures were real. And I wasn't, because nobody ever, like a lot of the articles I'd read about the Hubble pictures never really talked about how their color came about. So now for some of their pictures, the color is real. I learned later about narrowband and stuff like that, but knowing that some of those colors were indeed real in some of those photographs was really cool to learn, and actually kind of see it for myself and see these real colors that were out there. In February, so about 6 months in, 6-7 months in, I have an uncle who was previously into astrophotography, and when I was starting to get into it and posting pictures, he kind of wanted to get back into it. He decided to upgrade his whole rig, and he just gave me his C11 and his Celestron CGE mount, shipped it all to me, wouldn't even let me pay for shipping. And yeah, once again, floored, and got to finally have an equatorial mount on which to try to do astrophotography, which would solve a lot of the difficulties I was having with the alt-az mount. So yeah, I took it out to the park and got a much nicer picture of the Orion Nebula. He also sent me a focal reducer so I could get a faster focal ratio and a wider field of view. And took just 22, 30-second exposures on my DSLR and got a picture of Orion that I was very excited about. And in the subsequent months, took it out to hauling it all down from my second-story apartment down to my car, driving it 25 minutes out to the, I just joined the astronomy club, actually right about the time that I got in that telescope in February was the first time I was going out to the observatory. So I didn't have a key yet. So I'd kind of set up outside the gate of the observatory and work from there. And so I was taking pictures from out at this Bortle 5-ish park, So I got a really cool picture of the Whirlpool galaxy that I was very excited about. And when you're learning how to use an equatorial mount, there's a lot of challenges. You got to learn how to polar align. Alignment looks a little bit different, and just how the mount moves, and just trying to get everything working. A lot of nights were spent with a lot of hours just trying to get stuff to work in the first place, and eventually things come together, and you get some pictures that are really exciting. Continued throughout the summer and learned more and more. And then I finally learned how to auto guide. I got a little Orion ST80 refractor that I bought from one of my friends, mounted it on top of the C11, and was able to guide to, whatever accuracy I can get using a 400 millimeter refractor on a 2800 millimeter telescope. And got a picture of the Crab Nebula with all this detail, and it was so exciting to get this kind of detail on an image. This is still only like a half hour of exposure time total, because I'm hauling all this stuff out to the observatory, setting up, and then hauling it all back, bringing it upstairs into my apartment, and then getting up to go to work the next morning. And so a lot of excitement and a lot of lost sleep at that time as well. I don't know why that came up that way. Another picture taken about that time, the Dumbbell Nebula. Oh yeah, that's right. I don't know why those are both in there. Anyway, and right. How did I do that? I went back and reprocessed some things later on, I think. And so now I had that mount for several months, but all through that time, it had a lot of weird problems. It would slew kind of at a higher speed than it should when I was trying to slew something. It would keep slewing on past it, and I kept having all these troubles. And I figured out that these Ethernet cables that Celestion had used to connect the power, the electrical pair to the mount were very finicky, and could very often, if you touched them or looked at them wrong, would kind of disconnect a little bit and cause the mount to start moving at high speed. So I bought this upgrade kit from a guy in Canada who had a lot of the same problem, was making these upgrade kits. And something ended up happening either while I was installing it or with the kit or something, and I ended up breaking them out. I wasn't able to revive it after that. And I spent several months trying to diagnose it. I sent it off to Dr. Clay Sherrod down in Arkansas, who does a lot of mount repair and hypertuning and stuff like that. And even he couldn't figure it out. So out of sympathy, he sold me he offered to sell me a Celestron CGE Pro at a steep discount that he had gotten to put into a student observatory, but offered to sell it to me, and I gladly took him up on the offer. And so this is it set up at the Green Bank Star Quest later that year, with a telescope sitting on the top, this Borg refractor that a member of the Astronomy Club had given to me as well. I should have just been imaging with that, because it was a little bit easier than the long focal length Schmidt-Cassegrain, but I eventually did some more imaging on that. Now, that whole kit with the C11 and the CGE Pro and the tripod and everything is about 200 pounds. So I was hauling that up and down the stairs in pieces in my apartment, and that got kind of tiring after a while. And the Astronomy Club, of which I'd now become a full member and was able to get a key to the observatory, had recently purchased a dome that was on the property previously from a member of the club, and it was then opened for club members to use. So instead of hauling all of my gear out to the observatory, I'll just bring my camera bag and my laptop and set up in the observatory dome and just use one of the club's telescopes instead, and had a lot of success with that. This was one of the earlier images I took with that, and this is what I consider to be my first good astrophoto. 23 by 5 minute exposures, so still kind of single night acquisitions, still with my DSLR, and actually won an award for this image that year in the Astronomical League's Imaging Award Deep Sky category. I got second place, so that was really thrilling, and finally felt like I was sort of on my way in astrophotography and started to get some nice images. And sometimes you have to sit back and realize how much of this is taking is getting the data with taking all the gear outside and getting all aligned and everything all set up, and then how much of it is processing, and how incredible the processing is in terms of dealing with these images that otherwise like shouldn't exist, because this is a single subframe from that image. You can't hardly see the Rosette Nebula in here. And it's all that blue in the background is light pollution, even through the light pollution filter I was using. And I think I had one at the time. Yeah. And yeah, and then, but then when you stack it and process it and adjust the colors and denoise it, you can get an incredible image out of that. And it's just mind-boggling. So I went to my first major star party in May of 2017, the Texas Star Party. If you've not been to the Texas Star Party, I highly recommend making the pilgrimage to go there, because it is an incredible atmosphere of like there's usually like 400 people who are there, and it's just electric. You can feel people's just desire to do astronomy in the air, and it's just a really fun place to be. And it's easy to stay up all night just because everybody around you is so excited about what they're doing. So I brought out 2 rigs to this one. I borrowed that Celestron AVX, and I put my the 8-inch, that original telescope that I'd gotten, on top of it, and the Borg that had been given to me on top of that as a guide scope, and then the C11 on that CGE Pro with the Orion Short Tube 80 on top of it for guiding. And yes, I was running 2 rigs at the Texas Star Party that year, and got some pretty nice images. And especially if you haven't been somewhere really dark out west, and I have had some really good dark nights in West Virginia, but going out into the desert part of the country is really incredible as well. The sky is just bigger. There's not as many trees around, and yeah, you could just sit back and stare at the Milky Way all night. It was like it was coming at you. It was so cool. And it was a really weird experience to not be able to see the clouds, because so used to seeing them with all the light pollution. But you'd be looking somewhere and you'd be like, where'd that part of the Milky Way go? And then you realize there's actually a cloud moving in front of it, but you couldn't see it because it was black. It's just wild to be out somewhere that dark. One of my favorite pictures from that week is this just short capture of the Whirlpool Galaxy. I got to go look through Larry Mitchell's 36-inch Dobsonian telescope up on the upper field. Yes, 36 inches. And he brings this thing to the star party. The mirror weighs like 700 pounds. He has a winch on the back of his truck for it, I think. And yeah, it's incredible. You had to climb like a cherry or like an orchard ladder to get to the eyepiece. And when I looked at the Whirlpool Galaxy through there, it really looked like a picture. It didn't have the color, but I could see all the spirals of the Whirlpool Galaxy. I could even see the arm that was connecting M51 to NGC 5195. And it was like looking at a monochrome picture of it. And I was like, okay, I know it's a bright target I can do from home, but I just have to go get some images on it because it's going to be incredible from these dark skies. So over the summer, still kept going out to the observatory using the observatory telescope, and got an updated picture of the Lagoon Nebula, updated from that first single 1-minute exposure that I had taken on my original 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain with the DSLR. And, kind of comparing the two and seeing what now I'm able to capture with, not only capture, but be able to process. This is still not a super long exposure. This is still a single night, 20 by 5-minute exposure on a DSLR. But when you've got a mount that tracks well and a faster telescope with a wider field of view and better processing skills, you can really get a lot out of those images that you get. So another star party I got to go to was the Green Bank Star Quest in a little later in 2017. That one's really cool because you're basically in the shadow of the enormous 300-foot Green Bank radio telescope, the famous one in the background. And you can go on a tour while you're there to go up to the base of it, and it's extremely cool. That one's a little hard for me to go to now because they don't like wireless signals going on around the field. And I am so I got so many electronics now, and half of them give off Wi-Fi signals that I can't turn off. Like my focuser gives off Wi-Fi. So I almost can't go to that star party anymore, at least not with the equipment that I have. But usually I was pretty much the only imager there. A lot of visual observers who went to bed at midnight. It's like, come on, it's nice and dark out here. Why are you going to bed? And at this point, I also acquired a minion. The gal next to me is Michaela. She was in high school and she was in the astronomy club, starting to get into astrophotography. I was teaching her everything I knew, and she was kind of following along. And now she's getting her PhD in astrophysics at Ohio State University, and I couldn't be prouder. So it was neat to do astrophotography with her. One of the images I got from we had a lot of clouds that weekend, and I didn't get great images through the 11-inch, but this one was through that Borg refractor that I had on top. I think just a couple of 7-minute exposures I took on. I always get the Eastern and Western. I think this is the Eastern one because I think Wicked Witch of the West for the broomstick, Western Veil Nebula. I think this is the Eastern Veil Nebula with some nice color. So many stars. Oh my goodness, so many stars in that part of the sky. Also in 2017 was, of course, the solar eclipse that came across the United States. And the Astronomical League had their convention out at Casper, Wyoming, in conjunction with the solar eclipse, which was a great move, I think, on their part. And so I made the trek all the way from Dayton, Ohio, where I live, out to Casper, Wyoming, with one of my coworkers / another PhD student. And I brought out that little Borg and the Celestron Altaz mount that was that original gift that I got. And Altaz mounts are really the way to go for solar eclipses because you don't need to polar align them. And this is important, especially if you can't get to the site the night before or can't leave your gear set up there the night before in order to polar align. So being able to just plop the mount on the ground and say, okay, here's the sun, and have it track the sun, that's the way to go. It's so much easier. I used my DSLR. I had a monochrome camera at this point, a ZWO of 1600, but for an event as transient as solar eclipse, you really got to use a color camera. So I brought my DSLR, and I used the Backyard Nikon software on my little Microsoft Surface tablet to run all of my images automatically. Everybody told me, don't image your first eclipse, just sit and enjoy it. And I wanted to do that, but I also really wanted to image. So I spent months prior training, getting the timings exactly right for that sequence, for getting the exposures for Bailey's beads and for diamond ring, and for capturing different distances of the corona and stuff like that. Carefully timed this whole sequence in Backyard Nikon, and I hit go. And I just watched the eclipse. I didn't pay attention to the camera. I didn't pay attention to the computer. I just crossed my fingers and hoped that it would work on that day. And it worked. I went over to the camera. I hit the review button and screamed a little bit. And just perfectly in focus. We had some sunspots to focus on, which is really helpful, which we did not have in the 2019 eclipse. Everything came out great. I was so excited. And I took several different exposures of the corona and composited them together using this kind of ancient Photoshop technique, if you will, that I found online called the pellet method. That's just mathematical summing and dividing to get this kind of HDR exposure. It was kind of cool to go through. It's what people used to do when they would scan their film images into Photoshop and deal with them there. And this one got me my first Astrobin image of the day, my first and I think only one so far, which is it's not at the level of a NASA APOD, the Astro photo of the day, but among the astrophotography community, getting an image of the day is pretty clutch. So time goes on. I started using the monochrome camera on the telescope out at the club's observatory. It had a lot of chromatic aberration, as I came to learn, which became much more obvious in the monochrome camera than on the DSLR. But got another updated picture of the Orion Nebula with very nice, much nicer reds because the DSLR doesn't capture the reds very well. So, but the monochrome camera doesn't have the built-in filter on it that blocks a lot of the red light. So I was able to get a lot more detail in that hydrogen alpha there. And another Texas Star Party, fell in love with it, just started going every year, making the 20-hour drive from Ohio down to Texas, and brought the big boy, the C11 on the CGE Pro, and then my little itty bitty board on the little itty bitty Celestron AVX, and it's kind of like, you know, big brother, little brother look kind of there, which is just sort of silly. And yeah, honestly, I think I got better pictures on the board because imaging on a C11 is difficult, especially with, I did get a longer guide scope for it, but I still have to toss a lot of subframes for poor guiding. This is one of the images I got on that board with, let's see, did I have the DSLR on there? Yeah, with the DSLR of a dark nebula called the Snake Nebula, or Barnard 72. I'm so in love with this photo. I'm probably not going to update this one for a while just because it came out so nice. And I kind of see this sort of bowl here as well. I don't know if this is called the Bowl Nebula or something. I couldn't find anybody else calling it that, but I think it looks like a bowl with horns. And then, of course, the snake. And with the monochrome camera on the C11, I didn't get all my blue exposures didn't turn out, so I didn't get a full color picture of the Sombrero Galaxy, but here's the luminance channels put together with a nice sharp, kind of almost 3D looking Sombrero Galaxy, which was really cool to see. And, you know, I started having trouble with that mount too. It was kind of like the stars were kind of jittering whenever I slewed, and that included whenever it received guide commands, and it became pretty unusable for astrophotography. And those motors are expensive and hard to get, and I'd thrown so much money at getting this equatorial mount to work, and I kind of decided I wasn't going to buy any more mounts from Celestron. I was having so many troubles with them. So CGE Pro went back in the box for a while, and but the AVX was still working pretty well, especially after I cinched the gears together to take up some of the backlash, as long as I kept the focal length short. So went to the next year's Texas Star Party and brought out the Borg and the monochrome camera, and I got to bring my family out to that one. So my parents came out, and this is astrophotography uncle who gave me the 11-inch and the CGE, and my aunt, his wife, and this one's my mom, and this one's my dad. And my parents they don't know really anything about astronomy except what they hear from me. And they got kind of into it while they were there. The Texas Star Party has some pins that they have, like their beginners observing program, and they kind of their general observing program plus some special ones. And I showed them how to use the 8-inch on the Celestron Next Star mount, that original telescope that I got, gave them the observing list, showed them how to, how to use averted vision and things like that. And they went to town and went and found all the things on the list and remarking to each other like, yeah, do you see it there? It's a little bit off over on the side. It was really cool to share the hobby with them for a little bit. And yeah, they finished the program and earned their first observing pin, which I think was more than I had at the time. I don't do a lot of visual observing, although I do enjoy looking through other people's Dobsonians when I'm at star parties. It's really fun. I just don't own my own Dobsonian yet. A nice picture that I got from the Texas Star Party is of M106 here. I think I mixed some hydrogen alpha into this one as well. Yeah, I took the hydrogen alpha later and mixed it in. Yeah. So nice sharp image of M106. And this is a picture of the Eagle Nebula. I borrowed an SBIG STF 8300 CCD camera, and it with narrowband filters from same uncle, and took a picture of the Eagle Nebula and wasn't really happy with how it came out. The colors were ugly, the stars were ugly, so I didn't really do much with it. But then a couple years, actually just 2 years later, I had been working on a lot of my processing techniques in PixInsight, had learned how to do better narrowband color processing on the Astro Imaging Channel, and finally made an image of the Eagle Nebula, of which I'm very proud and very pleased with how those colors came out. They really look just like the Hubble colors, and that was exciting. So this is the same data. And so when you learn new skills, go back and reprocess old data, because you can get a lot out of it. I've got a whole long to-do list of data sets to reprocess after I get caught up on about the last year's worth of images that I haven't processed yet, because I'm getting so many from my backyard, I don't have time to process all of them. So later in 2019, I had the joy and privilege of traveling to South America, to Chile, to see the solar eclipse that went across Chile and Argentina. And I went with a couple of friends from the astronomy club, and two of their friends who had previously been in the astronomy club but had moved away. And we went down there as a group to go witness my second solar eclipse. So for this one, I actually brought my Skywatcher Star Adventurer that I had bought from another member of the club, my DSLR, a 300mm camera lens, a little Botter solar filter that I'd gotten from a member of the club, and a carbon fiber tripod. And I packed it all into a carry-on suitcase and a bunch of batteries and brought it all down with me. And they opened it up at TSA because there was so much metal in there that they told me it just looked like a black hole. So they wanted to see what on earth was in there. But yeah, I didn't have any trouble getting it all down there. The experience of this eclipse was a lot different than the eclipse in 2017 when I was at the Astronomical League convention. At the convention, they had some spots set up for convention goers, so a lot of other amateur astronomers. And during totality, it was silent around where I was at because everybody was just very focused on looking through the eyepiece, just looking up without anything, looking through binoculars, just trying to absorb the experience in silence. But here, this was all people who were just members of the public. I had a lot of people come over to look at my little camera rig because it was like the most high-tech piece of equipment that was around. And people were kind of interested in what I was doing with it. And I had just enough Spanish to be able to explain it. And when the eclipse, when totality began, there was a great shout. Everybody was making all kinds of noise. And it was just very, very different experience than when I was with just the amateur astronomers. So it was kind of neat to see those contrasts. And I can't decide which one I liked better. It was kind of electric to be around everybody who was just so excited about it. And Chile made a big effort to make sure that every single person in Chile knew what was coming. So for months beforehand, the signs were up all over town saying like the date and the time, because the eclipse was going to go right over this some major cities like La Serena. The grocery store bags had eclipse information on them. Trash cans, you get information on the eclipse is coming on a trash can. And it had become a part of just that kind of the local lingo and culture at this point. We were watching a soccer match at the hotel that we were staying at in La Serena. And this says in Spanish, Colombia failed to eclipse the red, which is the Chilean national team is the red. And so that was kind of fun to see that's just how much it was on the minds of everybody there, because the government of Chile just made sure that everybody knew what was going to be happening. One other piece of equipment that was there was this young boy who brought a DSLR, and he came and asked me like, well, how do I do anything with this? So we took some solar glasses and cut them up and put some cardboard around the sides and then put it on the front so that he could get some images safely when he zoomed in on the partial phases. And then I told him like, make sure you take it off during totality. So I don't know if he got any good pictures or not, but I got to help him figure out how to maybe get some pictures. And yeah, I mean, it's an eclipse. We had about the same amount of totality as we had in 2017, and it was incredible. I had nice big wide sky to look at, see that 360 degree sunset, and saw several stars and planets. I thought I saw Mars and Mercury, was 100% sure, but definitely saw Sirius, possibly Rigel, Procyon, Canopus, which is, it's fun to see some of these southern hemisphere stars, Alpha Centauri. It was cool to see some of these stars pop out toward the end of the day. And in this one, I also had my camera running completely automated, but I had my DSLR, I'd pick it up and took a couple of wide field shots, just not looking at the camera, I memorized some button settings and was changing stuff. and then taking some video on my phone. And this one felt like this is the time it felt like it was less than 10 seconds, and it was just super, super short. That's what a lot of people say, is it just feels like it's extremely short, even though it's 2 minutes, 40 seconds long. And yeah, had some nice pictures. They came out, the sun was a lot lower on, this was like at 4:40 in the afternoon in the southern hemisphere, so wintertime. So it was much lower in the sky than the 2017 eclipse had been. And so the sky background here is a lot brighter, and the quality is not as good. But it was really neat to see how different the corona was, because this was in 2019 when we were at essentially a solar minimum, and you can see how nice and ordered the corona is. And if I went back and compared to the 2017 image, that's much more disordered. And the images that are coming out of Australia from the solar eclipse last week is a very disordered corona, because we're still on our way towards solar maximum in 2025, but we're already higher than we thought we would be in terms of activity. So a lot of solar activity going on right now. And then we joined the great commute back to La Serena, which took about 5 hours to make the 50-kilometer trek. And our tour van driver, a couple of the other Americans in the vehicle, not me, egged them on to do the very American thing of getting into the shoulder and driving down the shoulder. And so it still took us 4.5 hours to get there that way. But yeah, this is the whole highway stretching out in front of us, very much a traffic jam. But we eventually got back around 1 a.m, I think. For the latter half of that trip, I got to go up to the Atacama Desert with the same couple people in this group. And we spent a week out there at the Atacama Lodge, which is just south of San Pedro de Atacama. It's owned by this French expat, Alan Mari, and he's got this whole incredible setup there. There's some adobe cabins that you can stay in, sort of like a hotel. There's what I call a sunflower field of telescopes. A lot of them are homemade out there. You can rent them for the week and use them all week. He does a lot of nightly public events. So people will come out by the busloads, and until midnight, he and a couple other people in 3 different languages will give this night sky tour in these like Bortle 1.5 skies to probably thousands of people a year. And so it's kind of fun to watch them. And then when they went away, then we could finally go and use the rest of the telescopes. And yeah, here's one of the tour groups here with the green laser pointer and the sunflower field of telescopes in the background, and the Andes in the background behind that. So we used a 24-inch and a 28-inch Dobsonian that were set up there, and observed all kinds of southern sky wonders, the Jewel Box cluster, Omega Centauri, Centaurus A, of course, all kinds of stuff in the Magellanic Clouds. And the Tarantula Nebula, which is in the Large Magellanic Cloud, is incredible at every field of view. You can zoom way in on it with a high power eyepiece and just see all kinds of incredible detail. You can use a very low power eyepiece and just take in just how much of it there is. And it's incredible to realize that is an enormous nebula that you can see all kinds of up close detail with in another galaxy. It's like 100,000 light years away. So yeah, there was just so much to take in and so much to look at. And of course, I got about a 35 millimeter f1.8 lens down with me. Not a very good one, a cheap one, but I was still able to get some really nice Milky Way shots and what I call the most epic space selfies. So this is me standing in front of the 28-inch Dobsonian, and the picture I had on the front slide as well is just me standing in front of the Milky Way, with my hands in the air. And yeah, I mean, it's incredible what you can get under dark skies, because things just pop out so much more quickly and easily, where I would normally need to take many exposures, even in Bortle 5, to be able to see any kind of detail in the Milky Way. I was trying to work on getting my other camera to work, and I had this one was sitting on top of a mount that was tracking that I was renting for that week. And I think this was with the 35 millimeter at f2. It was tracking on top of there for 30 seconds. And like it flashed up on the screen briefly, and I kind of looked at it, and then I went back and I was like, what? I went turned around and looked at it again. And yeah, this is just like a picture I took with my phone of the back of the screen on the camera of a single exposure that looked like the most incredible image I've ever could have stacked, and was absolutely dumbfounded and maybe said a few cuss words aloud at how incredible that was. So I also got to borrow a Sony A7S from Alain, and which a modified Sony A7S, and a Rokinon 135mm f2 lens, which I later went and bought one because it was such a great, fantastic lens. Got this nice picture of Eta Carina and the running chicken nebula. I don't see a running chicken, but apparently somebody did at some point. And a whole bunch of other night sky stuff in here. Lots of open clusters that I forgot the names of, but yeah, lots of incredible things going on here. And my pièce de résistance, still my favorite astrophoto, this shot of Rho Ophiuchi. I kind of had to have it off center because Jupiter was like right just above it and extremely bright. It was, in fact, it actually kind of ruined your night vision because it was so stinking bright compared to the background. And yeah, my favorite images out of that week were the ones I took on the DSLR with the camera lens. There's a pattern. He had just finished constructing, or was almost done constructing, a 45-inch Dobsonian telescope, the largest telescope in South America for use by amateurs. And we did get to look through it in the last couple of hours before we left for the airport. It was not yet collimated, but we got to look through it at the Tarantula Nebula. And the view wasn't as good because it wasn't collimated yet, but getting to look through a 45-inch Dobsonian is pretty darn cool. So I'm hoping next time I get to go down there, I'll get to spend a little more time on this telescope. So got back from Chile, moved to California. It's a long story I'll get into another time, but I spent about 2 years in California, itty bitty backyard, but I had a backyard for the first time. So I went straight to work. This was like 2 weeks after I moved there, went straight to work getting my telescopes set up in the backyard and then figuring out how to automate them so I could get a little bit of sleep. And I went to the Advanced Imaging Conference, which is in San Jose, and finally bought a good mount that I knew was finally going to work. I bought myself a Paramount. And in their ads in Sky and Telescope and other places, when they say it removes the mount from the equation, I can tell you after using it for 4 years, they're absolutely correct. It does remove the mount the equation. The mount just works, guys. Not an ad for software VISC, but yeah, what they say is actually true. So I got that set up in my backyard with, oh yeah, I forgot to mention. So my same uncle sold me a Takahashi refractor. And those of you who do astrophotography might recognize that Takahashi's like the Ferrari of the telescope world, of the refractor world. And he sold it to me for a very nice family discount. And I owned a Takahashi way earlier in my life than I ever thought I would own a Takahashi. And yeah, it's every bit as good as they say it is. My stars are incredible. And a member of the Astronomy Club back in Ohio had donated to me this 8-inch Newtonian. So I thought I would give that a try on, the AVX was still working. So even though I got the nice Paramount, I may as well keep using the AVX. And they began to multiply as telescopes do. And I was like, well, I have the CGE Pro. Let me see if I can get it working again. And it kind of actually did work for a little bit and then stopped working again. And I still am working on sort of getting it fixed at some point. And I ended up, another Celestron AVX was donated to me by a member of the American Association of Variable Star Observers, along with a QSI 583 CCD camera. So with all that, I started doing some variable star observing for the AAVSO after being introduced to Stella Kafka when I was starting my PhD journey, as she's another female PhD, and I was introduced from a friend of mine. Yeah, so lots of imaging going on in the California backyard. You'll note the night number, the observing night numbers increased very quickly from November number 258 to the following year, number 406, because I was in Berkeley. It's very clear skies and clear a lot of nights, and I just got a lot of imaging done, especially once I was able to get things running automatedly all night while I slept. So before I had a proper UV IR blocking filter from my monochrome camera. Here's an image of the Eastern Veil Nebula through the Takahashi. The stars are much better when you use an actual IR blocking filter. I think I've got some more of those later. And for the first time, I was able to do multiple night exposures. And that really helps you beat the light pollution when you can take, instead of just 20 exposures, when you could take 100 or 200 exposures. And I can also get a lot more detail on things that have a lot of detail when you can get a lot of images on it and do proper deconvolution. So here's NGC 2392. And I could probably pull more detail out of that now with Blur Exterminator, and I plan on reprocessing this data set. This one was one of my other favorite images. This is I think this is about a 27-hour image on the Dumbbell Nebula in hydrogen and oxygen narrowband light. Got a whole bunch of nice detail on the edges. And then 2020, during the pandemic, I drove home to my home state of Washington, to where my parents live, and bought myself a trailer. It's something I've been planning on doing and finally got to do. And this will enable me to go to a lot more star parties that don't have like bunkhouses and stuff like that. And also to go out to the dark sky site for the Sacramento Astronomy Club up at an airport in an airstrip in the Tahoe National Forest. It's the cutest trailer in all of existence, and nobody will ever have a cuter trailer than mine. It's just the best, and I could tow it with my mid-size SUV. When you go up at the Sacramento site, it's about portal 3.5, 4. I think they decided out there, and under dark skies you can get some nice images of some dark nebula. So here's the Iris Nebula, which made the cover of the 2022 Astronomical League calendar that year, which was all about women imagers. So that was another exciting achievement. Then I moved back to Ohio in a turn of events, and I rented a house this time with a backyard, and it happened to have this lovely complete fence and this lovely cement pad that worked out very nicely. So shortly after this was about a month after I moved out there, very quickly got my gear set back up, started with 2 telescopes, and then that grew to 3 and to 4. I also won another award that year for the first annual Williamina Fleming Imaging Award, which was incredible, and the plaque is enormous. It's really silly. And with these 3 images here of the solar eclipse, the Dumbbell, and the row of Fiocchi. And I've been judging that competition since then. Over the winter, I leave them outside. I put covers over them. They're pretty happy in the cold. Keep the snow off of them. My cat observes from the background. Oh yeah. By the way, I built this catio, 6 by 6 by 8 foot enclosure for my cats. They're very happy. They're very spoiled. So it grew to 3 telescopes that I had out in the backyard. I upgraded my my 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain to a 9 1/4 Edge HD. Put that on the Paramount. And then I was like, well, I should put the Skywatcher Star Adventurer out there on the Rokinon camera lens. I bought a new color camera, ZWO 2600. So I put the older 294 on the Rokinon because, I had a camera, I had a telescope, I had a mount. I'm gonna run it. So then I had 4 rigs out there. And I went to the Okie-Tex Star Party and ran 4 rigs at a star party. Yeah, that was an adventure. And I got some pretty nice astrophotos that week as well. This one of my favorite one of the Pleiades so far, taken through I got to borrow a really fancy, really fancy camera lens from a friend of mine, and got this through there, a 400 millimeter f2.8 Nikon, very expensive, nice lens that he let me borrow so graciously. This one's through the Takahashi, the Dark Shark, the Shark Nebula, and I kind of almost see, there's kind of 2 things coming at you here, like somebody's casting Eldritch Blast in Dungeons and Dragons, and they're coming for you. In 2022, I also went in with a new friend of mine, and a new PhD friend of mine, and we bought some land in Arizona together. He's also into astrophotography, and now we own 9 acres of land out in Arizona that we're eventually going to build an observatory on. So this is a picture of the land, and there's some light pollution off to the west, but it's we estimate. Well, I'm gonna take my sky quality meter out there. It was probably, I think it's about Bortle 2.5-ish. It's not super dark, but good enough for our purposes, I think. And now I've got, I've been testing some equipment for some companies lately. I've been writing for Astro Gear Today. Behind me is a Skywatcher CQ350. So I've got 4 tracking mounts, 4 fully computerized mounts set up in the backyard. Another telescope that I got from another astronomy friend of mine who unfortunately passed away, and willed to me whatever of his astronomy equipment I wanted to have. So I have even more telescopes now and some more cameras. And yeah, this is kind of the current state of affairs. This was taken, I took this picture in March amongst my own sunflower field of telescopes. I have some new favorite images I've taken over many, many nights. This is the Heart of the Heart Nebula. I got a solar telescope now as well. And before the rush of the upcoming solar eclipse, went ahead and bought this. People don't think they can do astrophotography with a Coronado PST. You can do astrophotography with a Coronado PST, and you get some pretty nice results. So you don't need a $3,000 Lunt. You can get a $700 Coronado, and you'll do all right. This was a cool filter I got to test, an S2 and H beta filter, which gave a really kind of new and unique image of the Orion Nebula. Another filter I've been getting to test is this new filter from Antlia. That's a light pollution filter, but it also lets through a lot of red and has really nice color balance. And I was actually able to pick up quite a lot of hydrogen alpha through a not narrowband filter on M82 here, and ran some blur exterminator to get some nice juicy detail in the core there. So kind of wrapping up, here's where things stand. I've been doing astrophotography and astronomy for 7 years, 10 months. Been averaging 97 nights a year, but it's a real kind of average of 2 different populations of numbers. The first several years of me having to drive out to the observatory and living in Ohio, a lot fewer nights, move out to California and have a backyard to myself, many, many nights. And even in 2020, last year, living in Ohio the whole year, 118 nights in Ohio. It can be done. Being able to image in my backyard at every opportunity is what really enables that. 28 nights so far this year. 139 unique deep sky objects, 414 data sets. I have a spreadsheet. I keep track of all this. You might have expected that. 1,780 hours of total exposure time. And this does not include about 15 data sets that I have from the last year that I've not processed yet. I have 32 terabytes of hard drive space, and I filled up about 24 of it now total with all my stacked images, my yet to be processed images, my calibration images, my time lapse, my solar system images. Yeah, it's a lot of data. I built another computer recently to just be like a data storage computer. And yeah, there's so much more to come. I was offered the opportunity to be a contributing editor at Astronomy, and I'm absolutely floored by this incredible opportunity. And my first article will be coming out in the August edition, so it's coming up. It's about how to do astrophotography without a telescope. And I'm running 4 rigs in my backyard. I actually have designs on setting up a 5th. I know. And yeah, it's been an incredible ride. So I know that went a little bit long, but yeah, that's where I'm at. And hopefully you probably had some similar experiences, and there is hope that you can get through the difficult parts of astrophotography and start to really have fun with it once you put on all the legwork to get everything figured out and how to get all the rigs to run autonomously overnight. It's been many, many nights of staying up late and troubleshooting, many nights out at the observatory. And now finally I get to reap the benefits of all those hours of sleepless nights by sleeping while my rigs are running, and it's incredible. And yeah, if you want to follow my images, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and on Astrobin. AstronoMolly images most places. My handle I use other places of molecule that I like too much to change it on Astrobin. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Yeah, does anybody have questions on anything, I guess?
Yeah, I got a question. Which do you prefer, ISO 1600 or 3200 DSLR?
Yeah, so I started with 3200. because I wasn't able to take very many exposures. But on my camera, on my Nikon, my D3100 and my D5300, 1600 has been kind of the nice middle spot between noise and sensitivity. Some people shoot at 800 because that's a little closer to that kind of valley between sensitivity and noise. It's different for different camera models, but I found 1600 to be a nice kind of go between. The game completely changes with mirrorless cameras, though. You can shoot at insanely high ISOs and you don't get as much noise as you would expect. So this is more for old-fashioned mirrored DSLRs, ISO 1600.
Molly, you're doing all this and you're also a PhD candidate?
That's correct.
Want to sort of parse that out for us?
Well, yeah, so this is what kind of keeps me from falling into the inevitable PhD like depression state. I got a lot of hard work going on at school, but producing astro images, and that moment when you get the stack and you apply the background extraction and the image begins to appear, and you're just like, oh wow, that moment kind of keeps me going a lot of the time. And also a lot of the outreach events that I do for the club and for Girl Scouts and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, now I've done a lot of the legwork where I don't need to be so hands-on on my scopes. I set them up. They usually run pretty decently. I go to bed, and in the morning over my breakfast cereal, I scroll through all my images from the night before and delete the bad ones and make some notes in my log. So, and I process on the weekends. My weekends are sacred. I do not do schoolwork on the weekends. I do astrophotography.
Okay.
Any questions from Zoom?
Mark has his hand up.
I think there's one in the chat here. Are you backing up your data storage? Yeah. Thank you for asking that. And I understand your concern. Yes, in 3 places. So I have cloud storage on Backblaze so that if my house burns down, I still have that. I have a NAS, a unit from this company called Drobo that I back up onto. That's my kind of local backup. And I was duplicating things between this computer and my server computer, but I'm running out of space, so I'm starting to move things over onto the server computer. But it's backed up in at least 2 places, the NAS and the online cloud backup. But yes, highly recommend backing up your data for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Molly. It's Mark, Great Neck Observatory on Astrobin.
Oh, hey, yeah.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I was happy to see that you were our speaker tonight.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I did have a question. Thank you very much for a nice talk, and I would love to go to the Atacama Desert. We had one of our members talk about it, a visit that he made as well, and I just think to see the southern sky. There's so much that we can see here, but to see the large and small Magellan Cloud, and I really I have seen Omega Centauri on the horizon. Literally, it sits on the horizon here outside of Boston.
Oh, cool. I've seen it
So,
from Texas Star Party, and it's a little bit higher, but still only 12 degrees.
yeah, and I think it's like not even a degree.
Wow.
I did get it though, but
Wow.
barely. You mentioned, because I'm looking for a filter, and I think you might have picked the one that because I do full color still. I'm not doing RGB yet.
Uh-huh.
That's my next jump.
Yeah.
You said the Antilla Triband?
Yeah,
What
so
is
it's the Antlia
Antlia.
Triband RGB Ultra, some combination of those 3 words.
Okay.
It's an interesting filter. It's they kind of designed it to be it sits in the middle between a light pollution filter, like a broadband light pollution filter, and a multi-narrowband filter. Kind of sits in between those 2 realms. And so it's got a big cut of a lot of the light pollution frequencies, but a big swath of red that it passes. And I have to go look at the spectrum again to see. They kind of do some.
I can look it up, but
yeah, it's they kind of made it to be like like a multi-narrowband filter that you can use on galaxies because it's got brighter, like broader sections of stuff. And you have to take more exposures on galaxies than you would ordinarily have to with a regular light pollution filter. But it is the color balance is really good. And it lets you have a lot more red than most of the light pollution filters that I've used.
That's what I'm looking for because I'm still in galaxy season and going crazy with those right now. So
Yeah.
anyway, nice to see you and thank you very much for a nice talk. And I'll see you on Astrobin.
Yeah. Good to see you. Thanks.
Yep.
Oh, Rich, have a question?
I have a quick question, Molly. Maybe you could outline, what are your plans for your monthly column at Astronomy Magazine?
In general, or the next couple articles?
In general.
Yeah, so I of course want to write about lots of astrophotography, but it is an observing column. It's the observing basics column. So David Eicher has told me I can do like 25% astrophotography topics. So I will be peppering in some astrophotography things. But this is going to be an opportunity for me to grow as an observer because now I can talk to people who I know who do a lot of visual observing, but I also like to do more of it myself to be able to write about those experiences more. So I'll be getting more into visual observing myself, I think. And kind of see where things go from there. And I have some plans on the articles I'm going to write for the next year. But yeah, getting a little more into the observing game, but still peppering in lots of good astrophotography because, it's my favorite thing.
It's good to hear you won't leave the visual observers behind.
Right, yeah.
Got a question from Glenn?
Yes, I'm the guy you replaced.
Yes, hi, Glenn.
Yeah, I want to wish you the best. Great talk tonight, by the way.
Thank you.
And I might be sending you letters just to how you do any astrophotography. I've never done anything beyond my cell phone, so I'll be learning a lot too. But have fun with the run.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I've got some real big shoes to fill, so I hope I do a good job. And I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. It's an incredible journey and just a breakneck pace, how fast.
Yeah.
We'll be excited to see where you go from here. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And with that, I'll close the meeting. I can get the last slide going. Here we go. So the next meeting will be Thursday, June 8th. Coming right up. So, meeting adjourned. I'll bring the lights up. So, thank you all for coming, and thanks again to Molly for the talk.